What is up, everybody? We are back with another WNBA update after yet another busy week of action, and we are getting that much closer to the WNBA postseason. And on today's edition of the show, we are talking Caitlin Clark. Any more news on when she could potentially return? We are also talking about those red-hot Las Vegas Aces who just continue to win and the impact that their resurgence is having on the rest of the W. All of that plus so much more. But we'll start today's show how we always do with the Fast Five. We'll run through the Fast Five performances that you may have missed this past week in the WNBA. We start with number one, Alyssa Thomas, someone we are not talking nearly enough about in the MVP conversation. And in Phoenix's rout over the Sparks, 92-84 last week, she had 12 points, 16 rebounds, and 15 assists. Let me say that again. 12 points, 16 rebounds, and 15 assists for her WNBA single-season record, 7th triple-double. She just broke her own record that she set in 2023 with 6 triple-doubles, and she becomes the first player in either the W or the NBA with at least 12 rebounds and 15 assists in consecutive games. Now, Phoenix has now moved past the New York Liberty for sole possession of 4th place in the WNBA standings. More on what that means here in just a moment. We move on to our second big performance of the week, Odyssey Sims. She dropped 22 against the Storm, 21 against the Sparks. The Fever defeated both teams. And Odyssey Sims was a pickup that the Fever brought in after Sophie Cunningham and Ari McDonald and Sydney Colson, all went down with injury. They needed to go out and get a healthy guard. Odyssey Sims came in and made her impact known in a big way. We'll move on to number 3. A'ja Wilson just continues to do A'ja Wilson things, and she has an insurmountable impact on both sides of the ball. She had 34 points and 9 rebounds, 4 blocks added on to that stat line this past week against Atlanta. A'ja Wilson is the motor that keeps that Las Vegas Aces engine running. Number 4, Jackie Young. We cannot talk about the Las Vegas Aces without also mentioning the impact that Jackie Young has had as well. Jackie Young had 11 rebounds and 10 assists for the Las Vegas Aces in that win that I just mentioned against Atlanta. Jackie Young led the team in rebounds and assists. So Jackie Young, Jewel Lloyd, so many other pieces of this Aces team that makes possible what A'ja Wilson has been doing. We'll wrap it up with our 5th and final performance from this past week. De'Erica Hamby of the LA Sparks had 27 points against the Seattle Storm in their win this past Monday, where the Sparks now stand there just on the outside looking in at a playoff spot. So picking up any and every win they can possibly get is massive. De'Erica Hamby was a massive part of doing just that. So that was your Fast 5, the top 5 performances in the W that you may have missed this past week. Now we get into it. It is game time. We'll get into our 4 quarters. She is Cassandra Negley. I am Caroline Fenton. It's game time. Let's jump into our 4 quarters, starting with the 6 and 7 and 8 spots right now currently in the standings. So we're recording this podcast on Tuesday afternoon. So right now, as things stand, the Golden State Valkyries are in the 6th place position in the standings. 7th is the Indiana Fever, still Caitlin Clarkless. 8 is the Seattle Storm. Now there's a whole lot of jockeying and a whole lot of a race for 2nd place. We will get into that here in just a moment, but there's also a lot of jockeying for that bottom of the standings as we look ahead to the postseason here in just a few weeks. Let's just set the scene right now for 6, 7, 8, because a big part of that is the Indiana Fever, the injury bug bitten Indiana Fever. For anyone who's just now tuning in to the show, hi, welcome. We're so happy you're here. Cass, just give us a quick background. We have not seen Caitlin Clark now in over a month. Will we?
If you watched the beginning of the WNBA season, checked out for a while, as many in sports do, and are checking in for the playoffs, you're probably shocked that Indiana is at 7th. Caitlin Clark has dealt with quite a few injuries this season. The latest is a groin injury. She has time to return. On Tuesday, she returned to practice. She's in kind of 5-on-0 scrimmages, full court. Looked like she hit a 3 from some videos out of practice. The Fever have 4 more games over 10 days in which she can suit up to prepare for the playoffs, or I guess maybe even plop right back in time for the playoffs.
Yeah, and she absolutely can. And the question is it the smartest thing to do? Is it the smartest thing for the Fever? Is it the smartest thing for Caitlin Clark? And if you haven't been paying attention, the Fever have been very intentionally vague with any and all information that they can give about Caitlin Clark. That has to be by design. Not only is it gamesmanship and forcing every opponent on the Fever schedule to think, is she, is she not, will she not? But it's also just not giving any information that you don't necessarily have to give. I always say, you don't do anything that you don't have to. Fever don't have to give any information, any more information about Caitlin Clark's injury. But some might say, well, bring her back for the playoffs since Indiana has been so, bitten by the injury bug. We have, Ari McDonald and Sydney Colson and Sophie Cunningham all out for the rest of the season. And I've said, and I would stay consistent with it. I feel like I have been consistent with it. You don't rush Caitlin Clark back. What's the point of rushing her back just to win a couple of more games in the playoffs than maybe you anticipated without Caitlin Clark? Get 100% Caitlin Clark next year. I've gotten some pushback on that of saying, well, she's been out for over a month. Like, that's not rushing her back. I'm not a doctor. Like, I don't know what a certain timeline of quote-unquote rushing back or not rushing back might be. Again, like I just said, the Fever have intentionally been incredibly vague. So I would define rushing back as bringing her back when she's not 100% healthy. I don't see the point, Cass, in bringing her back if she's 100% if she's not 100% healthy. But I can also ask you the question, what is the probability that the Fever can do anything in the playoffs if they don't have Caitlin Clark?
Well, I think first in terms of the injury, it's also difficult because it's a soft tissue injury. I'm not sure even maybe doctors know like she's 100%. Like you said, I'm also not a doctor. I don't have like full details on that. But Sophie Cunningham has talked about that. Steph White has talked about that. It's just not as simple as coming back from like a sprained ankle. Realistically, what can they do in the playoffs? I do think that this playoffs could be more tumultuous than maybe we anticipate. We've talked so much about injuries to Caitlin. Nafisa Collier was out with an injury. The Liberty are roiled with injuries. The Mercury were without some of their big 3 early in the year. Like, we were just talking kind of offline about Dallas having 8 players, 7 of which were listed as out on their availability report this week. So I think those injuries have maybe twisted the standings a little bit. And depending on who you can get back or when you've hit your stride, I think the playoffs aren't necessarily going to be as clear cut as we think they will. That said, as it sits right now, like Indiana would have to play Vegas, the hottest team in the league. If they drop to 8th, they have to play Minnesota, which is a tall task. And like not knowing how healthy Caitlin is, not to mention not having like Ari McDonald was a huge pickup, Sophie Cunningham, the shooter, other little things that have happened to their roster. I don't know. Not high that they're going to win.
Like, we don't know, right? Because this has been a plucky Fever team that have been able to accomplish much more, even in the face of injury, than I think any of us could have expected. That's credit to this team. That's credit to this front office. That's credit to Stephanie White, their head coach. But there's only so much that you can do. So maybe it's not a fair question for me to say, well, without Caitlin Clark, how much can they really do in the postseason? But I think it's a fair assumption to say that if they continue to fall into the standings, let's say they do face Minnesota, hypothetically, in the postseason, if they face this red-hot Aces team that we'll get into here in just a second in the postseason, that doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence. Even if Caitlin Clark does come back, and look, Caitlin Clark is the X factor in the WNBA that I think any team would want, any roster would want to have as a plug-and-play kind of player. But even then, with the injuries with the rest of their roster, it just feels like this is not the the Fever's year. And that's not fun to say. That's not fun to hear for Fever fans. And I know that that's not a fun feeling in that locker room or in that front office. But that, unfortunately, is just the reality of it all. But we'll see what the Fever can continue to accomplish throughout the regular season and what their postseason might look like. And, of course, with any news with Caitlin Clark, you'll be hearing it right here with Yahoo Sports. But let's continue from a team that has cooled off a little bit in the face of injury to a team that is red freaking hot. Cass, we'll move on to our second quarter. The Las Vegas Aces, now on a 12-game win streak. They simply cannot lose. Now, there have been a couple of impacts from this Aces surge. Of course, they've clinched the playoffs. They are now the second team in the WNBA standings. I mentioned earlier that race for second place. Las Vegas is in that place now. Minnesota is firmly in that top spot. It's Vegas in that second spot. Atlanta right behind them in that third. Phoenix in that fourth. Phoenix is just one game behind Vegas and Atlanta. Vegas gets the edge since Vegas has just swept Atlanta. They are now 3-0 against Atlanta all time on the season. They're 3-1 against Phoenix, who's fourth in the rankings, like I just said. At this point, now there's still basketball left to be played. There's so much tightness in the standings that any game, any outcome could sway things one way or another. But do the Aces have it all but locked up? The race for second place, is it the Aces?
I don't think so. I think, well, first of all, the Aces beating the Dream a couple of days ago was absolutely massive, and certainly kind of a punch into the Dream, maybe a punch that they need to roll through the playoffs. But if you look at the rest of the schedule, I mean, Las Vegas has to play Minnesota, then they do get Chicago twice and Los Angeles. But certainly you're looking at that Minnesota game as if they lose, Atlanta's schedule is twice against Los Angeles, twice against Connecticut. Maybe you view it a little more advantageous, although Connecticut has looked good lately and Los Angeles can just outscore you. When it comes to the Aces though, one thing to consider is what are teams like Minnesota, who, like you said, it is locked up, they're done. Mm-hmm. Are they going to rest some players? They already started by resting Kayla McBride in that game the other day. Does that change that competition with the Aces? I think the Aces and the Dream, every single game you should be paying attention because every single game matters if you want the second seed.
Every single game matters. I mean, it is the difference of the hair on your chinny chin chin. The good thing is that we will get a couple of these matchups and impact games on the schedule coming up over the next couple of days. So that race for second place has massively been impacted by the Aces surge and the Aces ability to, lock things up and be able to sweep Atlanta 3-0 against Atlanta this season. But it also has impacted MVP voting because every time I feel like, in sports in general, and especially in the WNBA this season, every time I feel like I have something figured out, it's oh, nope, never mind, just kidding, you thought wrong. Because it may have felt at one point that Napheesa Collier had signed, sealed, delivered, lock it up, throw away the key, the MVP race. But you cannot just make up your mind about something that early in the season. Because the Las Vegas Aces surge, I think, firmly brings A'ja Wilson right back into the MVP conversation. Now, we would be remiss if we didn't bring up Alyssa Thomas. Alyssa Thomas is a double-double getting machine. Alyssa Thomas broke her own record of 6 triple-doubles so far this season. She's the first player in WNBA or NBA history with at least 12 rebounds and 15 assists in consecutive games. What Alyssa Thomas is doing is not just great for this season, but she's been having a historic season. So it feels like Cass, Napheesa Collier, Alyssa Thomas, A'ja Wilson firmly in the MVP conversation. Am I missing anybody?
I mean, those are definitely your top 3, I think, on most ballots coming up. And then I think you'll have some guards in the conversation, what Kelsey Mitchell has done for Indiana. Who else am I missing? It's always so hard to find someone from the Liberty, but those are definitely the top 3.
Yeah. That's what it feels like, and it's just all 3 are having such historic seasons. Of course, Napheesa Collier's injury that left her away from the court for a couple of weeks isn't great when you look at the MVP caliber resumes, but A'ja Wilson has to be such a key cog in this Aces meteoric rise from a team that we were talking about at the All-Star break as one that was broken to now a team that is looking like the back-to-back champion version of themselves. I think it's hard to keep A'ja Wilson out of that conversation. What would be your maybe case for A'ja Wilson in an MVP conversation?
I'm doing what she's always done. I mean, the way she goes about her business, dropping 30 points on the regular, as you said, being the fulcrum of the Aces on both sides of the ball. Her numbers line up pretty similarly to Nafisa Collier's. And I think, most people, like, she was not maybe in the conversation for a long time because the Aces were 7th and team result does matter. So them skyrocketing up to the top, figuring it out. We've talked about this before, but as much as MVP is an individual award, it also says something about the team. It always does. So that would certainly be her case. I mean, 23.5 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, league leading numbers once again.
And of course, you can't have this story of this Aces team without Jewel Lloyd, without Chelsea Gray, without Jackie Young, all of these supplementary pieces to A'ja Wilson. If you just look at the Aces stats, I mean, A'ja Wilson leads the team in points, rebounds, steals, and blocks. And Chelsea Gray leads in assists, but like this team kind of ebbs and flows as A'ja Wilson goes. So again, Las Vegas Aces on a 12-game winning streak. They simply cannot lose. We'll continue into our third quarter, but first, let's get into our halftime. So Breanna Stewart dropped a brand new clothing line on her 31st birthday. It was on Wednesday. Happy birthday, Stewie. Stu York fashion line. That is what she's calling it. It says it's hats and t-shirts that say I heart Stu York. I mean, how can you be in New York and your last name is Stewart and you don't play into that? Hat tip to Breanna Stewart. They all sold out in less than 5 hours. I missed it. I will keep an eye out for the restock, but that's coming on the heels of Caitlin Clark and her line with Nike. So guys, we are seeing WNBA players that aren't just making massive impacts on the court, but in the fashion world as well. What can't they do?
Yeah, what I like most about it is she is not from New York City. I want to make that very clear, but she is from the state of New York. And I know when she announced that she was going to the Liberty and coming kind of back home, the people in Syracuse were really excited. I think they can be a little more excited. But Stu York kind of has a little bit of a double meaning there.
I don't think I even put 2 and 2 together there. Mm-hmm. That's such a great point. And I like that your call out to the people of Syracuse. Get more excited. You've got a legend from your city. Come on, stand up, Syracuse, New York. Okay, let's move on to our third quarter. The Golden State Valkyries have easily become one of my favorite teams to talk about. The team, the franchise, from its inception to now, it's hard for me to talk about them and not have a smile on my face. The success that they've had as a franchise, the number of sellouts that they've had, the amount of investment that the city of San Francisco and the Bay Area as a whole has put into this team is so exciting and gives me so much hope for the continued growth of the WNBA. And then you look at the team that they have put out there on the court, a team that not that long ago we were talking about one that was like, yeah, it's going to be a fun story, but playoffs, no way. Now the Golden State Valkyries find themselves firmly in the playoff conversation. They find themselves 6th in the standings. They have yet to clinch a postseason berth, but if the season ended today, they would be in the postseason. Cass, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I don't think any of us really knew what to expect from this team. But if you asked me to put my money on it, will the Golden State Valkyries be a quote-unquote successful basketball team? Not a basketball franchise this year, but a basketball team this year. I would have had to put my money on no. But they've been such a pleasant surprise. I mean, Veronica Burton, just the resurgence that she has had in a Golden State Valkyries uniform. She scored more points in this year with the Valkyries than she had in her first 3 years in the WNBA combined. What do you make of this Valkyries team? Obviously, it was a franchise, incredible success, but this team.
When I look back at maybe what we were saying in the preseason. I mean, first of all, for anyone to do this, it's very difficult. Expansion team is not easy. But we maybe underestimated Natalie Nakase and the job that she's been able to do as a head coach. She won those 2 championships in Las Vegas. Seemed like maybe waited around for a great opportunity. This was a great opportunity. When it comes to Veronica Burton, most improved player candidate for sure. And I think also, like, every player that they acquired, especially the players that they acquired like Veronica in the expansion draft, these are players who just, for whatever reason, didn't fit the system that they were in or weren't as good as the 5 before them. These are all like 6th, 7th players who have maybe done a good job or done their job, but not broken through. And Golden State has given them opportunities to break through, you know, because if you look up and down that roster, it is a full team contribution led by the defense. And I think kudos to them for delivering for their fans a potential playoff spot.
And what would this postseason potentially look like for Golden State? Can they host at the Chase Center, quickly becoming one of the most exciting places to play in the WNBA?
That is a little bit of a question. Before it sounds like the Valkyries came into existence, the Chase Center scheduled a tennis tournament.
What?
Let me just look up the tournament.
A tennis tournament? No disrespect to tennis. We've got a WNBA postseason to happen.
So Chase Center is hosting the LeVar Cup, a global tennis tournament, which was booked prior to Golden State's acquisition of the Golden State Valkyries. Okay, this is a statement from the team earlier this season. We're not entirely sure if they will be able to host a playoff game. But certainly, like, this is something that used to be, I want to make the clear distinction. This is something that used to be a constant in the W. Teams were changing locations all of the time because of NBA preseason or scheduled concerts or whatever, construction, renovations on an arena in the NBA offseason. That has very much changed, especially with attendance at what it is now. This situation is not that. This was, it sounds like, literally, they did not know that they were going to have a WNBA team, let alone a WNBA team that made the playoffs.
I will give them a break there. They didn't even exist yet. So I can't. So fine. You get a pass there, Chase Center. But, you know, if there is a way, if a path exists for the Golden State Valkyries to be able to host at the Chase Center, it will be one of the most electrifying environments that exists in this league. That is what they've built in just their first season in the league. So just kudos, hat tip to everyone on the front office side of things with the Golden State Valkyries. And obviously they wouldn't even be there if it wasn't for this team and for Natalie Nakase, their head coach. But let's move along to the fourth quarter, the Liberty. Now, I said last week, it's not panic time, okay? My panic button was out, but my hand was just lightly hovering over it. It wasn't pressing down on the button. It just felt like kind of unfamiliar territory for the New York Liberty to be on such a skid. They are now fifth in the East. The Liberty are now sitting at fifth in the WNBA standings. They are sitting at 24-16. Breanna Stewart is questionable for Tuesday night's matchup. So TB, we're recording this podcast on Tuesday. So if you're listening on Wednesday, we're a little bit behind, but she's been dealing with a toe injury. They suffered a loss to the Phoenix Mercury on Saturday. That was one of those teams that we said those kind of matchups are so incredibly critical. You have to pick up wins against some of those teams that are jockeying for, maybe not in the race for second place, but are jockeying for positioning in the postseason. Thoughts on where the Liberty are right now, because they've been dealing with injuries. They were without Breanna Stewart for about a month. Jonquel Jones had her fair share of injury time. They're on a really tough stretch of the schedule. They have a long road trip to Golden State coming up. Where are we at? What's the vibe? What's the temperature check in New York? York, I should say.
Stu York. The press conference clip of the year is Sandy Brondello coming in to say that JJ and Sabrina were not going to play the other day. JJ just had an illness. and she quipped, "Welcome to the Liberty 2025." If that will be capped with them lifting a championship trophy would be very funny. I would want to see that compilation. They've not had a good time with injuries either. The most interesting stat that I saw was New York is 10-0, 10-0 when Ionescu, Jones, and Stewart finish games. They are 13-16 when those three don't. Their most used lineup in games includes Emma Miesemann, who signed with them end of July, beginning of August. She's been there a month. I mean, these are crazy stats for a team that's chasing a championship and a repeat championship. I'm also not really panicked, but at the same time, you do have to wonder, like, when does this all fall apart with all the injuries that they've had? And I also thinking big picture here, because we are entering really the end of CBA negotiations. That kind of loose deadline, I believe, is October 31st, right after the finals. How are all of the injuries to all of these players going to impact CBA negotiations and what they're asking for? Because all of these players have been very vocal. We talked earlier about how injuries are impacting the standings. They impact championships, and they always do, to be clear. Like, you have to have some luck when you win a championship. But players and the player association are the ones negotiating this CBA. So how will they feel about it, and what will they push for throughout the playoffs while they're also having these conversations?
I mean, look at the Liberty. They're currently in the middle of their second West Coast road trip in less than a month. Like, you're never going to have standardization of scheduling. There's always going to be a team that feel like they caught a break, and there's always going to be a team that feels like they got the short end of the stick. But it does feel like, and I think New York is one example. There are probably several other examples that we could pull up right now of just really, really difficult stretches hitting at the worst possible time. So I think that's a very smart and very important point that you bring up, that these long road trips and at least having more favorable traveling conditions versus flying commercial, like, that makes a massive massive difference, or at least could make a massive difference. But still, finding as much standardization of scheduling, I think, is incredibly important, especially the more and more and more that you expand, because the three teams coming in from on that next wave of expansion, not Toronto and Portland, but you're looking at Cleveland, Detroit, and Philly. Those are all teams that are fairly centrally located. You throw New York in there, that's not a crazy amount of travel to bounce back and forth from Cleveland, Detroit, Philly, New York. So focusing in on your regional areas. Of course, you're going to have to go cross country at some point. Every league in America has to go cross country at some point, but being more strategic and being smarter about scheduling some of these long road trips, I think, will be one of the topics at the top of the list when it comes to scheduling. Because it's just, I mean, the injuries have derailed this WNBA season for so many franchises.
Los Angeles has a really interesting last stretch of the season here. They have 2 in Atlanta, and they come home. That's the 3rd and the 5th. So they'll come home. They'll play Dallas on the 7th. They'll go to Phoenix for the 9th. They'll come home for Las Vegas on the 11th. And then, of course, if they make the playoffs, they will hit the road for that Sunday's game.
They haven't made the playoffs in the last 4 years. They got a lot of ground to make up over the next, they have 5 games left on the schedule, 5 games left on the schedule.
Yes, they have the most. They have 5.
So that's, I mean, the best possible position you could be in if you're the Sparks, to have more cracks at it. So they have a lot of ground to make up over these next 5 games. But I feel like if we're talking about the vibes index, not power rankings, not standings, but the vibes index, the Sparks vibes index has gone up exponentially over the last month or so, especially getting Cameron Brink back into the fold. But as we wrap up our conversation about the New York Liberty, I mean, the stats that you just gave there, the difference in win and loss total when healthy versus not healthy is pretty staggering. And look, of course, when your team is healthy, you're going to play better. It's not rocket science here. But when we project the rest of the season into the postseason for the New York Liberty, I'll ask a similar question that I asked about Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. How much can the Liberty do in the postseason if these injuries continue to riddle this team?
They're one of the most, if injuries continue to, I mean, I think I don't know.
Yeah, like we don't know, but at least from what we've seen so far this season, are they the most volatile in the fact that like they can ride the highest of highs and potentially pretty low lows?
Yeah, I mean, I think they could fall out of the first round of the playoffs for sure if they're not healthy. I think you can say that about, any team. I think yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's not rocket science. Like, you need your team to be healthy and to get to a championship. Like, getting healthy at the right time rather, is key, and it's paramount, and it's something that has been this Liberty team has just been struggling with over the last couple of weeks and months. But let's look up to next week. Every single game matters for some of these teams, whether it's to make the playoffs or to, get better seeding in the playoffs. And that starts with New York at Golden State. That game is tonight, Tuesday at 10 o'clock Eastern time. This is going to be in my opinion, Cass, a big litmus test for both of these teams. I mean, if the Valkyries can get a win at home in a rowdy environment against this Liberty team, they start to really believe and to buy in into what they can accomplish in the postseason. And then if you're in New York, it just continues to be a gut punch if in fact they do drop this one tonight on the road.
Yeah, they also just can't afford to lose any ground if they do want to try and get the number 4 seed, which would be home court advantage in the first round.
And then what I think is the game of the week, Thursday night, 10 o'clock Eastern time, the number 1 team in all the land, the Minnesota Lynx, go on the road to the red freaking hot Vegas Aces. If there is one game I watched this week, if there is one game that you listening at home are going to watch this week, it is going to be Minnesota at Vegas. I am pumped for this one. Early thoughts on this one, Cass?
I think it'll just be interesting to see how Minnesota treats the last stretch of the season. They haven't had the best past 5 to 6 games. Dejanay Carrington left with an injury. So how they approach it in terms of rest and minutes and rotations and whatnot will be the most interesting to me.
Totally. And then that next day on Friday night, the Sparks go on the road to Atlanta. Now, the Sparks just beat Seattle. Like I said, the vibes are high. The vibes are fun in LA. They are trying to snap their 4-year postseason drought, and every single game matters as they kind of gain up some of that ground to be able to scratch and claw their way into the postseason. It starts on Friday night in Atlanta, and then the week rounds out on Saturday, Minnesota at Golden State. Yet another opportunity to see the Chase Center absolutely poppin', and another opportunity for Golden State to get one of those wins against a legitimate WNBA championship contender. She's Cassandra Negley. I am Caroline Fenton. We always appreciate all of you guys for stopping by. If you've been paying attention, it's an incredibly exciting time at Yahoo Sports. We have new faces. We have new shows launching. We have content that you can find us all over the place. You can find us on yahoosports.tv. You can find us on the Fast channel. So very exciting time to be part of the Yahoo Sports family. And we always appreciate you being here, interacting with us. Give us a subscribe on the YouTube channel. Give us a like, comment your thoughts down below. We are here every single week, keeping you updated with everything you may have missed this past week in the WNBA. So keep it right here with Yahoo Sports.